Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on your time zone. I'm so glad you're able to join us today. I'm Josie Quintrell. I'm the director of the Integrated Ocean Observing System Association. And on behalf of the other co-sponsors, the Sea Grant Association, the National Estuarine Research Reserve Association, the Coastal States Organization, and the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation, we welcome you to today's webinar on coastal resiliency. We're fortunate today to hear from two speakers, Mayor Justin Nichols of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and Joe Schumacher, Marine Resources Scientist with the Quinault Indian Nation. They'll speak about coastal resiliency and how the partnership between NOAA's on-the-ground programs are making a difference to their communities. So what is coastal resiliency? Simply put, resiliency is the ability of communities to prepare, respond, and rebound from coastal hazards. So those coastal hazards are things such as extreme storms, sea level rise, or in the case of the Great Lakes, variation in lake levels, shifting marine, estuarine, and lake habitats, marine heat waves, ecological changes such as the increasing number and extent of harmful algal blooms, ocean acidification, hypoxia, impacts to drinking water. So the way society experiences these impacts depends on where we live and how the changes impact our daily lives. And that's where NOAA's partner programs come in. So these partner programs are the state coastal management programs, the state sea grant programs, the estuarine research reserves, the sanctuaries, and the regional observing systems. And together, these programs provide a suite of support from data and information, technical assistance, training, stakeholder engagement, stewardship, and management tools that can be tailored to the unique needs of the communities. And it's the partnership between these organizations we're highlighting today, how they work together and with their partners to bring the expertise and experience to solve problems and support communities. They enhance NOAA's ability to address national issues such as sea level rise as how it manifests at the local, tribal, state, and regional level. What works on the outer coast of Washington may not work for Lake Michigan. So before I introduce the speakers, just a bit of housekeeping. We're trying to be respectful of your time today, and so we'll be posting links in the chat box that will provide more detailed information on the speakers, the programs we're talking about, and the issues. So please be sure to check the chat box. And we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end of the programs. You can post your questions at any time in the question box. You'll see that on your control panel. And we'll try to get to many of them as possible. Rachel Keelan from the Coastal States Organization will be monitoring them and asking questions at the end. So let's turn to our speakers. First, we'll hear from Joe Schumacher, Marine Resources Scientist with Quinault Indian Nation. Joe's worked for the Quinault Indian Nation for over 20 years, and the Quinault Indian Nation is located on the outer coast of Washington State. He provides scientific support for sustainable fisheries management, including salmon, groundfish, and shellfish. He's an active participant for the Quinault Nation on several councils, including the Pacific Fisheries Management Council, West Coast Alliance, the Governing Council for NANUS, which is the IUS Regional Association in the Northwest, and the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuaries, and actually many more organizations. He's also currently the tribal representative on the Marine Fisheries Federal Advisory Committee. So Joe.
Unmuted, there we go. Thank you, Josie. And I want to thank you all for spending some time with us today and attending this webinar. I want to introduce you to or reacquaint you with one of the most beautiful and remote areas of the lower 48 states, the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. It's been the home of tribal peoples since time immemorial out in this region. And as you can see on the map on the right there, we've got the Quinault Indian Nation and the three tribes north of myself, or the Quinault tribe, the Ho tribes, the Quileute tribe, and the Makah tribe. You'll also see adjacent to us the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary within this area. The tribes in the state of Washington were key to chartering this sanctuary back when we saw the need to protect this beautiful coastline from potential expansion of oil and gas exploration And since that time, the Sanctuary has become a real partner with us in this area. We're co-managers of the natural resources in this area on land, the forests, and the rivers, and all the way out to the ocean as far as 40 miles into this region. It's a unique tribal governance area. You know, what's important to us out here, of course, is cultural security, economic security, food security, all of this current and for future generations. You know, and the big threat for all of our natural resources, which is what I deal with so much, and our local infrastructure, is climate change. You know, we've got warming oceans, hypoxia events, low oxygen in the ocean that causes fish kills, harmful algal blooms that bring toxins to our shellfish and won't allow us to harvest them, storms that are growing in intensity in the winters, and coastal erosion. And combine all that with the looming threat of a devastating earthquake and tsunami, and we've got some real threats in this area out here to our livelihoods and our safety. You know, the connection to this area can't be overstated. You'll note in that map up in the upper left there, the big blue river goes through the Quinault Reservation. That's the Quinault River. It's kind of the big artery within the reservation area there. That river supports 5 runs of different salmon, or salmonids as we call them. You'll see that the beaches there out in front of us, we harvest razor clams, and in the ocean out there we harvest numerous species, including crab and fish. We have partnerships with many NOAA entities and partners, including the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, the Northwest Association of Networked Ocean Observing Systems, or NANOOS, that's the IUS regional body out here, and Washington Sea Grant. And all of these partners that we work with regularly enable us with better knowledge for planning and adaptation, and support that U.S. trust responsibility to protect our tribe's treaty rights and treaty resources. And as Josie mentioned, I also participate in the West Coast Ocean Alliance, the regional ROP out here, Regional Ocean Partnership, an important forum for us to be at the table with many of our co-managers in the ocean. Next slide, please. So this is a view of Tahola and the village of Tahola and the Quinault River that you saw in that map at its mouth where it enters the ocean. And those salmon runs come back up those rivers, and that's why there's villages there. The tribes have been there forever, because the salmon runs come in from the ocean right there at the mouth, and they're in their best condition. They're their best food, their best tasting part of their life cycle, if you will. And they're predictable. They know when those salmon will be coming back. And they've been harvesting there forever. So the tribes north of us are also at the mouths of rivers. But we have one of our species right now, for instance, the Quinault blueback, that's iconic to our identity for the Quinault Nation. It's a sockeye salmon. It's just wonderful. You can see them being roasted on those sticks there to the lower right. We haven't been able to harvest that now. This year will be the 4th year in a row because of a hostile ocean that's not allowing our young salmon to survive and come back to the rivers. So what few do come back, we have to let go up the river. We do not harvest any of those. That's one of our problems that we're facing in the ocean. You know, the ocean's always provided, but it's also been a major highway for the tribes out here, seagoing canoes as they went up and down the coast. And that culture still lives, as you can see with our dancers in the upper right there with their paddles, ceremonial paddles. But now our tribes, our Quinault and our fellow tribes, like our non-tribal communities, are modern managers and harvesters of the ocean. And our economic livelihoods are dependent upon data, scientific data, to help us survive. It's an isolated area, and we're very vulnerable to the ocean. There's one road in and out of all these villages, including the tribes to the north of us. The infrastructure in those areas is tenuous, including our transportation infrastructure, public services, and our connectivity. And critically, the village of Tahola is now recently being subjected to increasing storm activity and intensity in the wintertime. It breaches the seawall and floods that lower part of the village you can see there. And it's probably exacerbated by sea level rise, but in any case, it's forcing the village to move up the hill, as we like to say. It's a very expensive process, step by step, moving infrastructure and all of that. Climate change, of course, is the big concern, but looming over all of that is the threat of a very, very real threat of a devastating earthquake and tsunami from the Cascadia subduction zone just offshore. So the threats are many in our NOAA partnerships, including with Washington Sea Grant and NANOOS and and others have worked with the Quinault and other tribes out here to provide resources and data that help us manage and adapt to changing ocean conditions and to improve safety for our people. Washington Sea Grant provides boater safety for our fishing fleets. NANUS provides real-time data, and this year we'll be installing high-frequency radar on our outer coast out here to track surface waters that will help us with tracking potential oil spills or harmful algal blooms or stranded vessels. We've been included in competitive research grants, collaborative research, support for data hosting and delivery, and more. Washington Sea Grant has recently initiated an economic dashboard that can be accessed by anyone, including Quinault, obviously, when we need hard-to-find economic data for assessments and seeking funding. Next slide, please. So just to finish up here, Quinault is a co-manager at a sustainable harvest of this ocean area. Treaty rights extend well into that ocean, and those resources and the habitats that support them must be maintained for future Quinault generations. We'll do all it can to mitigate, Quinault will do all we can to mitigate for climate change impacts, but it's clear that we have to adapt as well. Working with NOAA and its partners is a critical component for the Quinault Indian Nation and our fellow tribal and non-tribal coastal communities to improve our management and adaptation ability as we look towards what's looking to be a very, very uncertain future. And thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Joe. What an amazing overview of some of the issues you and the tribal members are facing on the Olympic coast. So just to kind of demonstrate the breadth and depth of these NOAA programs and how they can help the diversity that we see in our country, we're now going to switch from the outer coast of Washington State to Lake Michigan. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Justin Nichols. So Mayor Nichols is the mayor of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, a city of over 30,000 people located on the shores of Lake Michigan. He got his political start early. At the age of 18, and while still in high school, he beat the odds and he was elected to serve on the Common Council. But that wasn't enough. He went on to become the city's youngest mayor and is now serving in his fourth term. During Mayor Nichols' tenure, he has focused on fiscal responsibility, debt reductions, investments in revitalizing the downtown area, the industrial park, and supported improvements in the city's parks and beaches, and is dedicated to creating a strong quality of life for citizens and visitors alike. According to his bio, both Mayor Nichols and the city of Manitowoc are vibrant, energetic, forward-thinking, and have tremendous amount of community pride that is rooted in the understanding of Manitowoc's deep history and tradition. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Nichols. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's a great segue into what we're doing here in Manitowoc and how we've been working with NOAA for quite a few years. In fact, I was first elected as mayor in 2009. And we started talking about the idea of having a national marine sanctuary right off of our coast. Manitowoc, Wisconsin is home to the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, and it's that maritime history that truly rings home. That is who we are and why this national marine sanctuary would be so very important to us and to our community. When we introduced this idea to the community a few years ago, when we started through the process, the federal process, we had over 300 people in the Maritime Museum, packed in there to all share support for the Maritime Museum. We had fireworks. It truly was a community event because it is because of Lake Michigan and the Manitowoc River that Manitowoc exists as it is today. It started about 200 years ago when the Native American population moved here to hunt and fish. They named it Manitowoc, which means home of the Great Spirit. And it's really that spirit that we bring into everything that we've done ever since 200 years ago. Our community became a city 151 years ago, and it was the confluence of the Manitowoc River and Lake Michigan that led the first Europeans to settle here in 1833. And it's because of those two bodies of water that that drove our economy for well over a century. And today, the Manitowoc River is a federal port. We can go about 2 miles upriver of 30-foot depths. We have industry along our river. And it was back in 1840s, 50s when we built our first schooners. And it was in World War II that we built 28 submarines for the war effort, shipped them out of our harbor through the St. Lawrence and to go anywhere in the world. And it's today where we're building a 2.7 million pound crane that will be shipped out as well, going to the East Coast to a naval yard. So it really, that shipbuilding history is so ingrained in who we are. And that's why this marine sanctuary means so much to us, because it will be focused on shipwrecks. There is another marine sanctuary on the Great Lakes, Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Michigan, that also focuses on shipwrecks. But it's more than just that. When we look at what are some of the greatest assets of the United States of America, the Great Lakes undoubtedly have to be near the top of the list. To have that large freshwater source is so very important. I've said how many times before, fresh water will be like what gold was to the Romans. It's going to be the future, and places like Manitowoc have to start to prepare for that, because it's such a wonderful asset that we as Americans have, and Canadians, but that we have in control, but it's also something that we need to protect and take care of, so future generations also can benefit from that freshwater source. So it's much more than just shipwrecks that we're focused on here in Manitowoc with our National Marine Sanctuary. We're working with many other communities, Sheboygan, which is just south of us, Kewaunee, which is just to the north of us. So it stretches amongst not just Manitowoc, but several communities. And typically you don't hear of cities that close necessarily working well together, but we have, because we all understand the importance of having this sanctuary designation. It's a national park in our backyard. So it's great for tourism, it's great for that industry as well. But to protect the history, that is, again, that's what built Manitowoc. It's those ships that are forever at sea. It's those men and women who shipped goods in and out of our port for 100+ years that made us who we are. We've had so many great partners along the way. Of course, NOAA, we started back in 2009. NOAA has a presence now here since the sanctuary designation is on its last leg to becoming officially official. The Biden administration has been very supportive. Our own Senator, Tammy Baldwin, has been very supportive. Our Governor, Tony Evers, has been very supportive of this process. And we have, again, since we're the state's maritime museum is located here in Manitowoc, we've been working with Sea Grant. We have a University of Wisconsin campus also in our community where Sea Grant has been very supportive and helping train the next generation. That's one major focus of the University of Wisconsin in Manitowoc here is Lake Michigan and education. And Sea Grant and NOAA have been very supportive of all that. It wasn't easy getting to this point. There was a lot of people we had to talk to. We have commercial fishermen, we have commercial, obviously, travel for our economy that we had to work through in order to make this a reality. But at the end of the day, all the groups got together in support of this because they understand the significance of what it means to have a national park in our backyard. But also, again, the most important is to protect the shipwrecks and to protect that great asset of Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes for many generations to come. So we're excited for the future of our National Marine Sanctuary, hopefully in the very near future to officially designate it as a National Marine Sanctuary. But until then, our community remains excited for reliving our history, preserving our history, so future generations can appreciate why Manitowoc is what it is today. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. That's great, and good luck on that designation. It is one of the things with the sanctuaries that it's quite a process, but because of that, people are engaged. They know it's a very public process. I know it's long and arduous, but I think in the end, it ends up creating a lot of support. So hopefully that'll come through quickly for you. So now we'll turn to your questions, and I'm going to ask Rachel to hop on, who's been monitoring the chat box and the question box. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. So I actually have one that is leading off of Mayor Nichols' question here. So both of you had to do quite a bit of engagement with your respective communities to garner support for Mayor Nichols, your sanctuary designation, and Joe Schumacher, the relocation of your town. And so we're wondering, did NOAA and its partners play a role in the building of support for these two different efforts?
Joe, you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Well, I can go ahead, Mayor. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Rachel. We do get information from NOAA that's useful for all of this, obviously, but I'm not the key person for that with the Quinault Indian Nation. I'm a natural resources guy. We have a wonderful planning group here that is working on moving the village up the hill. And they've got a lot of work on their hands doing it. But what's critical to us is knowing the inundation patterns, that it might occur from a tsunami. We get that information from the OOS out here, the Ocean Observing System, NANOOS. The sea level rise information is critical to us to be able to develop our infrastructure better and make sure that we're getting people to the right level to protect them in the future. So all of that information is coming from those NOAA partners that we're referring to today. Sure, there's more, but that's a start.
And I'll say yes, absolutely. We've had NOAA actual boots on the ground here in our area for quite some time with folks who've been extremely helpful. One of the most important things that we did from the very beginning is we looked at Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and what went wrong there through their process, and we tried to get all those questions answered immediately. We immediately brought in all the stakeholders, the commercial fishers, the industry. We brought them in from the very beginning, and we could answer questions like, what happens if there's a storm and you have to anchor? Are you allowed to anchor still even though you might be near a shipwreck? We were able to answer all those questions for them to alleviate a lot of their concerns and or fears. And that's really what built the support. And it was NOAA who provided all the facts and information for us. They were right there with us throughout the entire process. Yeah, we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have that support of NOAA.
All right, great. So this is a question that's specifically towards Joe. So how important is real-time data to the tribes, and what data in particular is useful? And I'm going to add on to that, how have HABs impacted the tribes, and what data has been helpful specifically for that?
Thank you. We're going to need more time, but I'll be quick. The data needs out here are extraordinary. In my time with the Quinault Nation, I've watched a steady improvement in the ability from what was once a black hole for data, in other words, we had very little or none, to the abilities that we now have with seasonal moorings and permanent moorings that are in this area that give us temperature, salinity, and importantly for us, dissolved oxygen data. Recently that we've had these fish kills caused by hypoxia events, low oxygen events in the ocean. And we need to track this information as closely as possible, real time or at least near real time, to better manage the fisheries that we have in our offshore, because for instance, crab can move out of the way when low oxygen waters come into shore, but if you've got them in pots waiting to be harvested, they're just going to die. So we can change our management of crab fishing in that area and move those pots out of those areas. That's where one example where real-time data helps. Otherwise, it certainly helps with our forecasting and ability with managing our salmon species and other fishery resources, and understanding how the ocean is during the times, the vulnerable life periods of those species out there. The harmful algal blooms, I could go at length. I'll just tell you this. We had a bloom that hit us at the end of last October that we're still feeling the impacts from. The toxin that bloom brought ashore was brought ashore during about a week-long, 10-day-long period, and it's still in our razor clams out here and affecting our ability to harvest those clams. So we need to track those blooms as best we can with the instruments that are offshore, with cruises offshore from our NOAA partners, and from our shoreside samplers as well.
Great. So I have another one here, and this one is for Mayor Nichols. Can you speak to what the role of the coastal zone management programs were in the designation process for the sanctuary?
Yeah, so they worked, everyone on this group here kind of worked hand in hand throughout the entire, again, Sea Grant as well. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation played a very critical role. They all, again, they all kind of had boots on the ground, especially during the first part of the process when we were actually creating the designation as is. So again, there's really nothing else to say to that other than all those groups were the Wisconsin Historical Society even, played a very major role in collecting the data, collecting the information to make the pitch. And that's really what made it easy at the end of the day for us. The only issues we had, frankly, were a couple of landowners here and there who thought the federal government was coming in to take their land, and that you can believe that if you want or not, but obviously that's not what they were doing. So we could quash all those pretty quickly.
Great. I have another question here. This one is to both of you guys. So do you have challenges with invasive species that NOAA partners can support you in addressing? Either first.
Sure, I'll jump in. So key right now, we're partnered with the Washington Sea Grant folks here in trying to better understand how bad the invasion of European green crab are in our local estuaries and our coast out here. We're just amazed at how fast these little critters have come in and taken over some areas of our estuaries, in particular Gray's Harbor that Quinault has treaty rights in just to the south of me here, and Willapa Bay on the outer coast. But these green crab are also getting into Puget Sound as well. So Washington Sea Grant's been a key partner in controlling those, and at least understanding better how the invasion's going and helping us potentially to control them, because at this point we've got a long ways to go to get anywhere near control.
Yeah, I'll just answer real quick. Yeah, same. Zebra, mussel, alewife, we have a couple invasive species, and all the groups have been working with us and been very helpful as well. And especially when for us, when we're talking about the shipwrecks and how we can preserve those with the invasive species that are coming in, are in the area, or coming into the area. So yeah.
All right. Two more questions. I think we've got time for both of them. The first one is going to be a combo again to both of you, but a little bit different. So the first one is to Joe. Would additional directed resources specifically for tribal coastal resilience be beneficial? And for Mayor Nichols, would investments in working waterfronts be something that would be useful for Manitowoc? Hoping I pronounced that correctly.
So I'll address the coastal resilience directed funds. Yeah, I mean, obviously those would be extraordinarily useful and important for us out here, as long as they were directed in a way that's useful for us. In other words, they really will work for those needs that we have on this coast, and that they adjust accordingly to those needs. I mean, things change from year to year. We are a government. We have all the organization and capability to handle all these types of funds and projects as long as we're funded properly to do them. So yes, I mean, directed funds to the tribes would be an extraordinary idea, as long as it was done properly and in conjunction in consultation with the tribes.
I'm a politician. I'd never turn down money, so of course. But I mean, absolutely, especially since I mentioned being a federal port here, channel, the industry that we have along our river, it's critical that we have federal support. But I would add on to that too. Last year we saw the highest water levels on Lake Michigan and Superior than we've seen in 100 years. So we had a lot of shoreline erosion. We had a lot of our wastewater plant is right on Lake Michigan, as most everyone's is along the shore here. We had a lot of concerns and issues with our infrastructure as well. So a lot of what we're looking for, and NOAA's been helpful, and other groups have been helpful, along with a lot of others, especially with the new infrastructure bill that's being proposed to help with shoreline erosion, because that took a big hit for us last year.
Great. We're going to do one last, hopefully quick question for you guys, and then we'll close out with Josie. So you guys have touched on various different ways that NOAA has assisted your local communities with coastal resilience work. Are there gaps that still remain that could be addressed? And could NOAA partners help to assist your community in kind of filling those gaps? And yeah, end there.
Mayor, go ahead.
All right. Well, you know, there's a couple. Like I mentioned, there was a Sea Grant and others was working with our UW system. You know, we're fortunate to have, you know, where we can provide education right here in real time, in real life, to students. So, you know, obviously, more help in that area or funding. Really, for us right now with NOAA, it's moving forward. More than likely, this designation will happen for us here with the National Marine Sanctuary. And the next question after that is what's next? How can we capitalize on that? How can we make Manitowoc a destination with the help of NOAA and the groups? Because really, it's unique. It's beautiful, and there's a lot of educational opportunities and tourism opportunities, obviously. What are the next steps? And that's why for myself and others, continually contact our representatives in Congress and Senate to just encourage continued funding for NOAA and all these important organizations in the federal government. That helped. I mean, Manitowoc is 30-some thousand people. It's not a large city in the United States of America. But having NOAA and that federal, like I said, it's a national park right in our backyard. Not many cities can say that. And just having that continued support really puts us on the map in a much different way. So continued, obviously, funding. We push it hard that all these organizations continue to get the federal funding that they need and deserve.
And as I referred to earlier out here, I mentioned earlier, we have gaps. This is a large ocean area out here, and the regional needs for data are extraordinary. Our partnership with the Sanctuary is key to that, in getting data from them and helping us also with doing deep sea bathymetry and exploration and characterization of habitat, and as well as with NANUS and getting that data delivered to us in a real-time manner. So we need data. The tribes have thousands and thousands of years of cultural information, traditional knowledge, but we need Western data to really manage our resources as they are now and into the future.
Well, thank you, Mayor Nichols and Joe, for that and for giving us a glimpse into sort of the complexity of the issues you're facing, but also some of the opportunities that lie ahead. You know, I just want to say that, you know, we've kind of done a deep dive into two communities within the nation, but you'll find similar issues in all the coastal states and the Great Lakes around where all of the NOAA partners operate. And so, you know, I think the remarks by the mayor and Joe kind of give you just a sense of how these partners work together. They work with people, politicians, scientists, and others to kind of deliver and tailor the projects to their needs. And the support doesn't happen magically. We do need congressional support. So I think Derek has put in the chat a joint testimony that all these programs came together, if you want further information about that. So once again, thank you, Mayor, thank you, Joe, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time, and please reach out to any of us if you have questions, and good luck, Mayor, with that designation. I hope it comes through soon. Thank you.